What's up, Primo?
Dial a prayer. Yes.
We're
Yeah,
back
I'm
again.
looking for some kind of wisdom to oh, hey, I'm on the show. Hey, what's going on? Just
What's
doing
up,
a little
man?
bit to make sure that 2022 it doesn't crash land as hard as it 2021. Like we actually are having a good year this year. I'm excited.
We were like maybe a couple of weeks ago, and then the whole fucking world broke loose here.
That's what I'm saying. It just 1-800 prayer. That's not a real number, guys. Don't really call that. I made that
Well,
up.
maybe back in the 90s it was, and we're going to be talking about the 90s tonight.
That's
too,
right.
but-
Oh my gosh.
So, first of all, I just want to let everybody know, obviously we had the Ahmad Biard stream scheduled today for Satori Biard watches. I just want to get like a clear context of everybody know what's going on. So what happened? I'm sure people are like, what the hell happened? So what happened was it was just a logistical schedule mishap. Obviously, we're dealing with time differences. And I think what happened was because we recently just had the daylight savings time, it screwed Aman up on his translation of the time. So he was very sweet, kind guy. I reached out to him and he said that let's reschedule. So we're just working out the logistics and hopefully going to be doing that stream next week, probably on Thursday. So look out for that. We'll schedule it. If not, if we can't do it there, we'll definitely have it on the schedule at some point. But you know, these are the things that you go through on a podcast.
Right. And my favorite one to this day was we were doing the radio show, and we do it, and you do it, and radio's different. You don't get to YouTube's very open. I like this about this platform, so we can talk as much as we want. Right. With radio, we had 15-minute increments before each show, so really you had 7 minutes of talking. And I had this great guest that wanted to promote one of his things. And the first thing comes up, and all of a sudden, no show, no nothing. The show starts. The guy's not on. I'm like, what is going on? Right. All of a sudden, he texts me at the end, like going 14 of the 15 minutes of the first segment. So we're literally cutting a commercial. He texts me and he goes, I got off work. I ate lasagna and it knocked me out. And he had slept through only his portion. He made it through the rest of the show, able to listen. He's begging me to come on. I'm like, we got all the other guests. I got nothing, got no space for you, buddy. But yeah, it's always fun. That's what I love about this.
Yeah, and it's no fault. I mean, this is new to me, scheduling people, getting them on. So, you know, you're going to go through the, like, you know, you're saying you've been doing this a long time. You're going to go through bumps in the road and you'll kind of figure out the logistics of doing all this stuff. So it's tough sometimes when you're dealing with time changes, and especially someone that might have hours difference of time change at where you're at. But
yeah, five to be precise. So
right. So we got Basil's Bezels in the chat saying at least the stock market did bounce back today. Yes, it did.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, daylight savings time, he had a feeling as well.
Dude, you heard about the daylight saving time thing? They're trying to pass a law to get rid of it. Like, that is awesome. I'm like, everybody's getting excited about that. And that'll be right when I need to not change my clocks will be when they call it. So I still have to go back and change them. And I don't know.
And it's like, I think this comes up every single year. This is always something that's on like the docket and people start talking about it. I just get it done and get over with. I mean,
we need to fight for it this time.
Yeah, really. And Basil's also saying we caught up an hour to other time zones. Yes, nice. We did.
Yes,
we did. So hopefully,
do they have time changes over there or over in other countries?
I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. Some may not.
Right.
You know,
so we would be some weird hole in the existence of the passage of time, like a couple months every year. Okay, just making sure. So English and we're crazy. We're out there. Who's this?
Gentleman's Hangout podcast asking Axl Rose or Kurt Cobain. Wow. So I would say Axl Rose is probably that end of the 80s and coming into the 90s. Definitely. I mean, Nirvana and Kurt Cobain was definitely the Beatles of my generation.
I remember Kurt Cobain because Nirvana, like, everybody had gotten into music by the 80s, and I had already been playing guitar for a long time. So everybody was into that metal vibe, everybody. And a couple of guys were going over to the hairband stuff. And it was, remember the 91, 92 era. I think a third or a quarter of our friends that all did music were like, no, we want to make not a grunge band. They want to make folk bands. I don't know where that came from in our area, but like, suddenly they pulled out like banjos and acoustic guitars and started singing Kumbaya. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. So, but yeah.
It's crazy, man. I remember going to like I think the local store here. So we had like strawberries, coconuts.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was Record Town. Remember Record Town at the Emerald Square Mall?
Yep.
And I remember actually going and buying tapes. Like, there weren't even CDs yet. And that was like probably, I mean, I didn't start seeing CDs until the 90s. But remember the big CD cases that you used to get? The big, it was like a cardboard.
My cases were embarrassing. Like, they look like Bibles. Like, I had this thing that was like, it looked like some dude that was like a multimillionaire walking into the place, but it was all CDs. And I opened up and everything alphabetical, or oh yeah, it got out of control.
Yeah, you had that big binder and you had all your CDs in there. And you used to take the because the CD unfolded. We're talking about CDs today, kids. You used to flip it open and you'd have the insert in, and you used to slide it in. Yeah, you used to slide it in behind the book and put the CD in there, so you had to protect it or whatever.
Yeah, it had the little vinyl thing in the, not vinyl, but yeah, it was a vinyl mesh that was in the center, and that was so that you could put the CD, so it was clear in the front and clear in the back, and then you have like two sides to it, kind of like a trapper keeper of the 90s. It was painful.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. So I guess I wanted to start this off in kind of my reason of getting the whole 90s podcast today was I don't know if you guys recently known, but I was a big wrestling fan in the 80s and the 90s, but I guess apparently Scott Hall actually had passed away the other day. So rest in peace to Scott Hall, definitely. And I was just really surprised when I saw this, because I know that they did that documentary with Jake the Snake, and it was kind of like resurrecting Jake the Snake, which was a phenomenal documentary. And Scott Hall towards the middle was in a pretty similar situation with Jake the Snake, abusing alcohol and drugs, and actually called Diamond Dallas Page to come actually kind of like rescue him and get him off drugs and get his mind straight. But I was really surprised when I saw this, because as I reading about this and knowing that he was doing a lot better, and apparently this all started, I guess, with an accident. He slipped at home, ended up damaging or breaking his hip, and went into surgery. And while I was in surgery, a blood clot actually got dislodged and went through his system. Yeah,
they lost control of the clot. So that was the problem, is that they were doing it, and you have to have control of these certain things. Well, I guess once they lost it, it went through his body or whatnot. And that's definitely causing of heart attack. So he ended up having 3 heart attacks in a row. And that was the end of that story. So,
yeah. And apparently they said that, I guess he was on life support. He was fighting. They took him off. He was still fighting. The family had made the decision to take him off, and sadly he passed away. But I tell you, like wrestling for me as a kid.
Yeah, it's a big thing. I hope I didn't lose Brian. So yeah, I don't know if everybody can hear me or not, but Scott Hall was a huge part of the NWO series of wrestling. Can you hear me okay?
Sorry about that. I think my wife. It's about that time, about 8 o'clock at night, when everybody decides to jump on their Wi-Fi in my area. So,
did you hear me talking, or did I like it too?
No, it literally goes flat and just spins.
Wow. All right.
So
that was funny, because everything seemed to be working on my end, so it was like weird. But yeah, you were saying.
That. Yeah, I was just saying, like, as a kid, it's sad to see this, because wrestling, I think, for kids in the 90s was a huge thing. I mean, the battle of WWE and WCW, and it was Monday Night Raw versus Monday Night Nitro, and it was just watching those two compete, and then obviously seeing Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and eventually Hulk Hogan going over to WCW, and I think starting one of the best things that probably ever happened to wrestling, the Hogan heel flip. and doing the whole
I wish they ordered sandwiches today. For easy can.
All right, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try to readjust my Wi-Fi. I apologize, guys. Hang on.
No problem. So for me, back in the 80s was pretty much like, I want to say 83, 84, somewhere in there. WWE had really picked up. Back then it was WWF, and WWF had picked up a lot of wrestlers. They started absorbing these areas. And then what happened was Turner Broadcasting had WCW. So they split apart. Then they came back together, and basically it was a huge fight. And really, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, those guys really led the charge when it came to what would be the new face of wrestling. Now, obviously, over time, that kind of fell apart, and WCW had its really technical problems, if you will. But even with that, Scott Hall had been both famous in both WWE with Kevin Nash. They were part of the Awesome Click that everybody heard about.
Yeah.
So there was a big thing with that. And then moving over, it was really a shock for them to have come to WCW. But they took what they did, and they did for one team, they did for the other, and it was a big deal. So these guys were cutting edge for what we know as wrestling today.
Yeah, and and the thing that's really crazy about it too is that you have to think, Scott Hall, he never held a world title. He held in the international continental belt in WWE, but he never actually held a world title. And to be as popular as he became as Razor Ramon, and then obviously coming over to WCW, turning into the Scott Hall and Kevin Nash character, I'm kind of beside myself that they never put the strap on this guy.
Well, the biggest thing for Scott Hall was he was plagued throughout his life with alcohol addiction for a while. So it became very difficult. There was times when he wouldn't show up for events and had issues, and there was always some sort of battle going on. And some of that actually rolled over into actually being shown on an air, which I don't kind of agree with a lot of that stuff, but that's just the way of wrestling. So, yeah, that was the big deal. And I think that kind of deterred people from getting on board with him. So, yeah, it's hard, but you never know. There could be other things. It's political or whatever. When it comes to wrestling was a very political thing. You had to be in the in crowd and all this other stuff. So he just ended up being kind of the guy that was in the lieutenant position all the time. And I think that's where you like to be, though, because it really is a no pressure area. You know what I mean? You can do whatever you want. You make a good check, and you know what I mean? At the end of the day, he's a legend. He's Hall of Famer. So, and he's well deserved.
It's sad. I think it's really sad, and to see that this guy, again, we really don't know who he is, but what we've seen about him, it looked like he was really looking, he was turning his life around. He's getting reconnected back in with his kids. Right. He stopped, the alcohol and drugs. He got healthy. And, it's just really sad to see this happen, but it's crazy too, because I was actually reading an Instagram post from Kevin Nash, basically saying that, that this is going to be extremely hard for him to get over. And I'm sure it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, he said that he literally has spent more time with this man than he has his actual family.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah. 360 some odd days a year, every year for God knows. I mean, he had been their career spanned at least 20, 25, 30 years, something like that.
Probably 30 years, easily 30 years plus. So, yeah, man, I just wanted to kind of bring that up. Obviously it has some connection to the 90s, 80s, late 80s, early 90s into the 2000s. And,
that's crazy how long that went on too. Like, imagine that. Think of that. People don't really, WWF really got its kick in like 87. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? A lot of people think it got before, but it had its tension, but there was a lot of different areas that were really feeding into the wrestling genre. So you still had a big fight going on. It wasn't until I want to say WrestleMania 3 that, and people don't understand the problems that happen in the background of that event to really like a simulcast event.
Mm-hmm.
You had stars that would come up like Cyndi Lauper and junk like that were on these shows. And it was a spectacle. Liberace coming on, that was, unheard of a kind of thing. And it really made it mainstream. But it also meant that a lot of people, like, there really wasn't fields of any other type of wrestling until WCW came in. Because if you were, and that thing is, I'll tell you right now, if you went to that WWF school and you weren't at least, 5'11" was short. If you had to be 6'2" was the golden number. 6'2" to
McMahon
6'6".
wanted monsters back then.
Yeah, everybody had to be big, right? And that didn't really change until, and I want to say, because I'm 5'11", and I really think that kind of Owen Hart was the guy that really, did.
Well, it was that Attitude Era too.
Yeah,
once that Attitude Era in the the late 90s, 2000 started to take over, that was where the WWE or F started to flip and try to compete against the NWO, and they started bringing in more, high flyer type of guys.
Luchadors, that was the big thing. So once the Mexican guys got involved in Japan, New Japan got in, we had a different style of wrestling, and it was like in a normal wrestling match, we probably have 3 or 4 spots. 7 is like a main eventer. These guys had 16 to start. Like, I'm like, how do you remember all this stuff? But they were on point, and their stuff was spectacle, and it would really brought something that we didn't realize we needed to the wrestling genre, and brought new life into it. And that's really what happened to wrestling over. It just constantly would have new life breathed into it, and it would pound again.
I think, and just going back to talking about WrestleMania 3, I think, you said that's really when the height of wrestling really started to kind of take off. And Vince McMahon did something very smart. He started that, that rock and wrestling. You had the cartoon, Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, and then he started to do it with the crossover of, different artists and celebrities, and bringing them into, the wrestling, the whole mix and the storylines of everything, Cyndi Lauper. I think they had Mr. T at some point, and just really bringing in that celebrity appearance. And that I don't know, Mr. T might have been a little bit earlier, but and then obviously you had Hulk Hogan that took part in was it Rocky 3 as Thunder Lips?
Well, that really was actually, he wasn't supposed to do that. The wording was they wanted to actually fire him for doing Thunder Lips, which I thought was, because he's friends with Sylvester Stallone.
Right.
But did you know that if you go to business school, that Vince McMahon's the training about Vince McMahon and his history it used to be WWF. Then it was WWF, and then eventually World Wildlife Foundation sued them, and it became WWE. That whole process is actually taught in business school.
Really?
To show how, it's huge. People didn't realize, and it was so funny because being part of that and knowing what happened was kind of weird to come back later and go, we're in business school, and they're, oh, let's talk about Vince McMahon. And I said, I can teach you this section of the school. And the guy was just like, really? Like, yeah, let's go. And we knew so much about that era that it was really weird to hear that the tricks that he pulled are still taught today about how business is very off the cuff. So, but Vince still does. The only problem I've ever seen with Vince is Vince, I think, believes that he's the one that fires everybody. He believes that he wants to fire all the wrestlers, and he's the last ever, which is why when he took over WCW, that was a huge thing for him. That was the end of the fight and saying that he won. And it was a really weird event. So
I just wanted to touch a little bit on this, I think, to kick off the show. And
20 minutes in.
I had some Wi-Fi problems, but still, I mean, I think as 90 kids, I think we look back and think about this stuff. And if you were involved in wrestling and really, liked it, I liked it early,
I don't know many people, like I said, I don't know many people that didn't like wrestling, even when so if you were younger, you got back into wrestling. And then when you were younger, you got into it because the fight was really the ratings on it. There was a time, by the way, that it was challenging the Super Bowl for weekly ratings. And there was a point when that fight between WCW and WWF was really coming to a head. And that's when the ratings really spiked. Once Vince McMahon had bought WCW, their ratings just fell right off. Nobody cared anymore because that fight wasn't there.
Right.
And they continually tried to renew the brand, and it was very difficult to write, off cue, like write
I
these
think those are
storylines.
some of the, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I
No,
think
go
those are
ahead.
some of the things that he did screw up. I think, melding in WCW,
Right.
buying out ECW. I mean, I used to love that ECW. I watched that in the late 90s or early 2000s on, it used to be simulcast out here on like Telemundo. I remember watching it at
Yes.
like 11 or 12 at night. It would come on and you get an hour or an hour and a half show. I think when Vince stepped in and started kind of taking over, and he basically just wanted to buy all the talent out and bump out all the
That's
competition.
all he's done in there since he actually had said if his father knew what he was going to do to wrestling, his father would have never handed him the company.
Yeah.
So
Wings and Watches has upvoted. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate
Yeah.
that. But, again, I think melding in those two brands and trying to make it WWE, it didn't work out.
He should have never let anybody know that it happened and then orchestrated the fights. Because imagine what would have happened if all of a sudden you're in a WCW show and Steve Austin walked in and you had no idea that Vince owned the company. Do it under a ghost company or something that, nobody knows that you controlled it. And all of a sudden these guys ran in. I bet you money we'd still be watching wrestling today.
He tried.
That would be huge.
Yeah, he tried doing that with ECW because, he kind of played the whole having them show up it was a Monday night Raw that he came in. And he kind of fucked all that up, and it just didn't. It never really worked out. And then when he tried to bring in ECW and make it like a WWE type of ECW, it really got fucked up.
Right. Paul Heyman was being groomed by Vince to be his replacement. So that was the thing is when he left, it was kind of it was a bad thing for Vince. I think it changed him a lot because I think he stopped believing he could trust people. And I just think it's a lot of it was Vince's attitude kind of put in. It's just how wrestling is. Wrestling is a rough business. People don't realize how crazy it is.
Yeah, and they get worked like rock stars and get paid fucking nothing. Well, back then they did. I'm sure they have agents and stuff like that. No. Yeah.
That's the thing is that there was a time, like we were saying in the 90s, where it really went up. And I thought the pay plans really went well in 2000, 2005, when, guys like Hulk Hogan could go creative control. But those were the only guys that were making the big bucks. Like the little guys were still making crumbs. My favorite statement today was for Mick Foley when he said, "What's the difference between old wrestling and what you're doing now?" And he goes, "The check's clear." And that's really what it is. It's so true.
It's very true. These guys did a lot of that shit back then for no money and really beat themselves up. And it's sad, they get kind of, they have this superior talent, take bumps that I could never think of taking in my entire life. They're touring like a fucking rock star. They're drinking and, probably involved in a bunch of other stuff and getting paid shit. And then they kind of get spit through the meat grinder. They may get bumped out of the talent squad and they're kind of on their own and no money, no insurance. And it just
wrestlers, by the way, live in pain. They they don't have a world without some sort of every day. It hurts. So
anyway, rest in peace, Scott Hall, one of the best. Razor Ramon, if you guys watched him, and just kind of sucks. It really sucks. So not to start the show off 24 minutes in with
that was I like that segment. That was good. Kind of it's funny because I really felt like I was like, when we bring this up, I'm like trying to make it simple, like we'll get it in and get it out, but I'm like, oh man, that's a piece of history. I mean, possibly name something bigger that happened in the 90s that you really think that changed the way our world is, something that stuck long term.
Something that stuck long term.
Not grunge music either, because I'm gonna get mad at that one.
You don't like grunge music?
It's not that I like. I lost so many bands with the grunge music. It's people who we were larger than life. As the 80s came out, everything was big. It was almost like everybody wanted to be huge. They wanted to be famous. Then we got into the 90s, and this kind of like I don't know how to say it. Everybody got simple. Like it just, everybody like wanted to slow down and do stuff. And for me, I was, hyperactive. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to get big. And that was kind of a time that it went towards, because we had lived with kind of the goth mindset and everything was negative. And then it became the emo thing. And, now we're getting into stuff where people are talking about suicide and all the stuff that I didn't want to deal with any of that. I wanted to be happy, upbeat, moving forward. And that's, I don't, it's hard to explain where it was. We lost a lot of stuff because of some of the changes that happened.
But don't you think a lot of that is happening now? I mean,
it's even worse now
that we're going so fast that everything is lightning speed, lightning fast. I mean, look at how quick, just look at even how, the dawn. I mean, and you're a little bit older than me. So you got online probably a little bit, longer. What I'm saying is before me. I got online maybe 93, 94.
That's actually early for most people. Yeah. I was on in 91. I was using bitrate modems to call up databases way before that. So yeah. So when 91 came out, we actually had an internet, man. We were on it. It was great.
But my point is, look at just in 30 years, how we've gone from a dial-up modem to literally having the internet in your hand at the touch of a button.
5G, man. Like that, we're talking, you can download a movie faster than you can watch it.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? Like you get in the whole movie you can have on your computer. Back when I first started, like when I would say 93, 94, I forgot when, because I started selling eBay pretty much the second it came out. And we were selling to places like Germany and all these other places. And when we got on that, I remember saying that the pictures took time to load. Like when you had a picture, you're like, how many pictures do we want to put up? It's like 1 or 2, Yes, computers, basically.
Computers. Yeah. I mean, computers are a huge thing, but my question is, are we going too fast? Are we, I just don't feel like it's making, I don't feel like it, like when the internet came in and then you had AOL and you remember that event, and then, maybe Facebook in the early 2000s, but there's really nothing that I can hold or glue on to now, because everything just changes so quick.
The thing for me,
too fast?
And that's where people kind of get confused. So back, video games and systems from Nintendo now have a legit flight simulator, and a legit flight simulator that I've actually flown over basically my house in a flight simulator now and can see where I live. Like we went over the school and I'm like, this is I can actually see these features. And back when I was doing flight simulators back in the 80s, man, it was lines and drawings. It's like the best. I mean, you got wire frames and that was incredible.
So Wings and Watch is saying, Wings and Watch is saying, I remember when I was in grade 6, they were teaching us how to surf the web, and now we have everything. Times have changed. Dude, I remember back in school, like we weren't even connected online. We just learned how to type on, not typewriter. We were doing like, it was like the big thing, like Apple Computer, and I was typing on a first iMac, and learning how to type. It was the blue screen with the white cursor and the blinking. And you just practice.
I had the green one. So yeah, that was, they were like, I remember the big argument of what is better, green or what? I was like, how bad is that? Like you've got 2 colors. And then, and by the time it was like 87, 88, we're like, hey, we're up to 3. Like that's
what Wings is saying. Yeah. The old Apple One. Yeah. It's crazy. And look where we are from the Apple One to now having an iPhone. Like, what is this, version 45 now? I mean, it's like,
I had a TRS-80 and a Tandy 1000 SX. So if anybody out there knows what that is, get ready to be in pain.
I had what did I have? Remember compact computers? A compact computer, and then HP.
Yeah. But that was the thing is back then to get information, we couldn't. There was no way you'd have it, like call somebody up or do whatever you didn't know. Now today, it was funny. We had my daughter had a problem with her space bar on her keyboard, and it's one of those Google ones.
Yeah,
and it was 2 seconds, I've popped it up, and then I was like, oh, okay, this doesn't install like the other ones. Let me look a YouTube video up. In 3 seconds, I have the YouTube video. I've skipped to the area where I know where it's at, and I've gone back in and fixed it, and it's better than it came from the factory. And
it's funny though. I remember like I used to be in a band in the early 90s, and there was no GPS, so the only way we could get around is, remember this, kids? We actually had to call someone and get directions, and you would literally get lost 4,000 times trying to get to a club or make a show, and you'd have to stop at a friggin' convenience store and say, can you tell me where Smith Street is, or you can tell me where the highway is? It just,
everybody wondered why I was the rally guy, and that was the problem. Like when anybody needed directions, I had an actual physical map and could, where are you going? There. All right, that's there. That's the address right there. Let's do this. And I could get you there. And that was, you might as well have been a hunk of gold back then. That I was the internet. So remember MapQuest. Oh yeah.
I was just going to say Wings and Watches, and then I'm going to give Wings and Watches for a bell for that one. But yeah, MapQuest. And we used to have to print the directions out and bring them with you.
3 pages, man. Yep.
He says, I got so lost driving from Toronto to New Jersey.
Oh geez. Yeah. But the travel wasn't that bad. It's the beginning and the stop that were so key to the, like it's either 95 or 81 or whatever. But there was the one major highway. But when you got there, you're like, nobody knew where they were going.
So we're about halfway through the show. Can we just pause for a quick commercial break? I got a little commercial I want to play.
Yes.
All right, guys, we're gonna pause, hit a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Mr. Beast, I dare you.
That's right, Mr. Beast. I am daring you. I'm daring you to come on the Let's Talk Live podcast and do a one-on-one chat with me and my co-host Primo. So it is out there. Challenge is out there. The challenge.
We're ready.
We are ready. Anytime, man. The link's up there. It's posted. Jump on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna dare him every single show until he comes on. You're gonna hate me after about the 100th show. You're gonna go, start playing that stuff. No.
I'll hate it if he never shows up. That's the thing that's gonna get me, because I'm like, we're not asking for gold here. I mean, just come on. I want to hear some input on how you got here. And the thing is some of the stuff that a lot of us already know. I want to know the stuff we don't know. You know what I mean? So, because there's tons of people, the people that want to do some of the stuff out here, they gotta know. So
Basil Bell saying MapQuest was a lifesaver in the 2000s. Yeah, it was. And then obviously, GPS came in, and then that just was a whole game changer. And I remember when, I had a pager. I didn't even have, because there was no cell phones. I had a pager in the 90s, and then it went into the cell phone era, and you used to have to get prepaid ones because we were too young. Mm-hmm. You couldn't get a contract.
Wow.
So you would get these prepaid, I think it was an Ericsson phone, and the thing was like a brick. It was huge and had the stubby antenna on it. Mm-hmm. And I would load that up without, things, and you couldn't even text message on it. It was so crazy. And then what was it? Verizon started coming out and pumping out those Motorola Razr phones, and those things got ridiculous. And then obviously now we're at the
I never had a pager.
Didn't have a pager.
Never had a pager. And it was funny because we had the joke was I didn't want people to get a hold of me that easily. And you've seen
I don't now.
The on my phone, the scam calls are they're getting bad. But yeah, it was I think it was 99 or 2000. And my wife, my current wife back then was just my girlfriend, had talked me into one and said, you're gonna let me get you one. And I did the thing, and I was on the year plan. I was all like crazy stuff, and night and hours and stuff like that. Oh yeah, it was weird. That the only beauty of it is because I had relatives in other states. So if I called them after 7, that was my thing. I wasn't getting the deal for anything else. If I called them at 7, I'd have an hour before anybody would go to bed. Then I could call them. So
anything after 7, you would get the free time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Man, just not like that anymore. I remember when you used to get unlimited data, and then they fucked everybody and started making everybody pay for their data and all that stuff. Right. So,
they still kind of do now, but it's just like you'd be amazed at how much I go through on data.
A lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this would be interesting to pull this up and go through some timeline. stuff.
Yeah.
So just things that maybe we can remember. So in the 1990s, it looks like Tim Berners-Lee publishes a formal proposal for the World Wide Web. That's crazy.
Yep.
Let's see. I remember this one. The most
the one from the 1990 there, and I think this is kind of funny because if we think about what kind of the decades would give for us, when we went into the 90s, we started off with basically the fall of Russia. So it was supposed to be the end of communism. All that stuff was gone, and now we're going to start all over again. And by 91, we were pretty much already back in the war.
This one I remember, the T-Rex that they found, and I remember that name, Sue. I totally remember that. The internet becomes available for unrestricted commercial use. Yep. Wow, Freddie Mercury, that long ago. Yep. Freddie Mercury from the band of Queen, he dies and passed away from AIDS.
And Eric Carr from the Kiss that died at the same time.
Yes, yep. Mm-hmm. And then we had Bill Clinton was elected American president. Yep. The Mall of America opens in Minnesota, which is crazy. I still have
Disney.
Not been. Yeah, I was gonna say Euro Disney opens in France.
And you've never been to the Mall of America?
I have not, and that's something that I definitely want to do.
Really? Okay.
I heard it's insane.
Yeah.
Real quick. Wings and Watches says no more free phones now. Remember when you renewed your plan and you got free phones? Yes, that's very true. Yeah, that was
now your phones are $1,000.
Yeah, now you pay for them. Another slick way that that these companies get people to pay extra fees.
Look at 93. That was so huge. Intel introduces the Pentium microprocessor. I remember having the discussion when they were like, we're hitting 1 gig or something like that of processor speed. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. How are they processing the heat for this? And and we saw it. I was like, wow. And I had just built a VGA. I want to say it was a 486 or something, probably a year or two earlier. And so it was really crazy to go from that to see what the new generation was going to look like.
So we got 1994, Nelson Mandela becomes president of South Africa. In 1994, Major League Baseball season is canceled and the Players Association goes on strike. I remember that. Wow. And then actually they came back. I think it was the next year. That was the steroid era when Sosa and McGuire were chasing the home run record and literally knocking home runs like out of the park.
Wasn't it 93? Can I remember the name of the guy now? The one where they filmed the guy getting beaten on the side of the road? And that started the LA riots. Wasn't that?
That was, I'm trying to think, that was the OJ Simpson trial. So I think.
Okay. It was the same time.
So Simpson flees in the white Bronco. I actually remember that. I was with my band. I was playing in a band called, the name of our band was 0 Hour. We were actually at the studio that day recording our demo tape, and I have it here somewhere, recording our demo tape. I came home and I remember flicking on cable that night. We had a late session, got home at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and that was literally all over the news. And I remember watching that live.
Yeah, it was so weird as it broke into some big game or something. Oh, Rodney King. Wings and Watches. Thank you. But yeah, so with the OJ thing, they actually broke into a game that was going on, a baseball game or something. And I remember getting called in going like, you're not going to believe this, OJ. They were trying to arrest OJ, and it was the slowest chase in history. But I think it's the reason the Ford Bronco is famous today. I think that's.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say that. And then you have to start thinking all that, all that surrounding of the trial, all the outside camera work and stuff. And then it was the first time I think cameras were allowed in during a high profile case like that. And that actually at the end of it launched, which became Court TV. Yeah. And that was,
oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't even think of that. Huh.
Yeah, that was actually the launch of Court TV. So you have
we get eBay right there. That was a eBay change for me.
Yeah, in 95. Yep. And then I thought this was kind of interesting. The 55 mile an hour limit imposed during the Middle East crisis in 73 and 74 is ended.
Do you know why they ended it?
I have no idea.
There were more fatalities. 55 miles per hour. Not only do you not save gas, but the fatality rate was up. I want to say it was 20%. So more people were dying on the highways going faster. And that's why today, not only did most places raise it from 55 to 65, But even today, there's a lot of places debating Maine or New Hampshire, what is somewhere way up there, is now trying to move it up to 70 or 75 because they've realized the fatality rate's even less if you let people go 75. How crazy is that?
Yes, Reginald Denny was one of the guys during the riot. He was a truck driver that was pulled from the. That was crazy, man. That was just bad stuff. Bad stuff all around. Let's see. What I get to the
Princess Diana.
Yep, divorces Prince Charles. The internet search engine Ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves?
Yes, I do.
I don't think I ever used that, but I remember it. In 12 months, number of internet host computers goes from 1 million to 10 million. So this is really, now you're starting to see really the boom of the internet age, 95 into 96. And I think probably a lot of that was AOL became very popular at that time.
What really happened too was not only the demand of different search engines and the idea of URLs being a thing and people could understand them and understand that they had search options, which was Ask Jeeves. There's a lot of other things going on that you could search too. Ask Jeeves is kind of the first one to go, we're going to spend money to advertise and see what happens. But not only that, but because they have access to it, there was more people getting onto it. And these younger kids who had these servers, built servers, started advertising in the area. If you want internet access, come through us. And now you see a lot of little guys that will later on sell those 1 million subscribers they have to AOL, and suddenly at one afternoon they're $10 million. The kids that went from $100, $300, $400 computer to being rich in an afternoon.
Yeah, I think I remember watching a documentary, as a short documentary on YouTube about AOL, and I remember them talking about going up and literally buying out all the servers and just making people crazy rich.
There was one literally they take $10 million for whatever, and they planned to make that money back. I just don't. It's so weird to think about. Like, remember Tripod for our area? Tripod was huge, and I think it was pretty much international, but it was a local area access thing that was, again, started buying stuff up, and everybody wanted their niche. And if you got your niche, you know how to convert it.
So 1997 takes us, the first Harry Potter book is published. Really? It was that long ago. Wow, that's crazy. Scientists at Roswell Institute unveiled Dolly, the first successful cloned sheep. I remember that.
That's just wrong.
That's just
Primo has been disconnected from the chat.
Brian has left the room.
Yeah, right.
Mike Tyson bites Evander Holyfield's ear. I remember that. Yep. Wow. And then here we go. The boom, really picking up the boom of the internet. The Google search engine is found, and then Apple starts stepping into the game. Apple Computers reveals the iMac.
Steve Jobs has come back now, and now he's changing the game. Yep.
United States has a budget surplus for the first time in 30 years.
Yep. It's a Republican-controlled Congress with Bill Clinton as the president, and for the first time ever, we have a surplus at the end of the year. Real
quick, Shot in the Dark says where he is, the speed limit there is 75 miles per hour. Wow. Let's see. President Bill Clinton faces impeachment proceedings. The file sharing.
What's the definition of is?
Yes. File sharing.
Napster.
Napster is created and caused a lot of shit, especially with Metallica. They were pissed off about that. And I remember that dragged on forever and ever and ever through the court system. Eventually Metallica, I believe, won and ended up shutting down Napster. And then LimeWire, it started shutting all those sites down as well.
Yeah. Well, LimeWire came back on. They were on for, I think, a lot longer because they had a control system on theirs that others didn't have, or something like that. But I remember, like, I had a friend, I think helped design their logo, and he was telling me all about how they did their thing. But Napster, because it was, I think, now, and Sun Turtle says Napster was cool. So Sun Turtle, correct me on this, but Napster was specifically for for songs versus LimeWire was file sharing.
Everything. You could find everything online.
So people kind of said, hey, you want to watch my video? We'll put it on LimeWire, which is where I put my stuff. So,
and Shot in the Dark says they still do 80.
You still do 80, right? By the way, the average is usually 80. I mean, people go, not many people go slow.
So you had Napster. Metallica basically shuts down Napster, and Sean Parker, the creative Napster, actually goes on to link up with what's his name from Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and helps him ultimately create and mold Facebook as to what we know. Remember Y2J? We thought everything was going to crash. And
you said Y2J?
Yeah.
Y2 Jericho? Or you mean Y2K?
Oh yeah, Y2. You know why? So I'm thinking wrestling.
That was good. Yeah.
This is Y2J.
Jericho. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, that was. Now the funny thing was I remember we were doing some kind of testing procedure, and we were having people test stuff for Y2K when it hit. So I remember going, this can't be real. And there was a guy that ran this program, and he said, these are the programs that they're using, not the stuff we're using now, because most of the stuff was, he says, it's really the old banking systems and the old systems they had in place. And he flipped it on us and then had everything basically active so we could see the changes. And it was apocryphal. Like, imagine if the banking system would and they were talking about, what if the system just decided to zero numbers?
Yeah.
Versus, exponentiating. Somebody would get like $20 million in the bank account, and another person would be zeroed out. He's like, yeah, it could cause a big problem. But yeah, it ended up kind of working itself out, and it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, they made that big fuss and hyped it. I remember like sitting on. It was the big debate, like, oh, something going to happen. And then, obviously everybody watches the ball drop, and they're showing people looking at like their computers and stuff. And it was a big melodrama that actually turned out to be nothing. So Wings and Watches saying in 1998.
I think it might've been though. I think if they hadn't got ahead of it and changed it over to to 4 numbers, I think that might've been a problem. So, hey, and what is it? 9,999. There may be an issue again with the computer. So just saying.
Wings and Watches saying in 1998, the International Space Station was launched. A lot of zero-G studies led to innovations. Yeah, that's a great point, man. That's a great point to bring that up. So yeah, that was some major events. And then I wanted to just kind of bring this up. We'll bring this up before we end the show. It's basically a timeline of U.S. history. A lot of things that went through. There's probably a few repetitive things, and I'm not going to get into like every
TWA Flight 800 in 1996. Wow. You was thinking it couldn't have been that old, right?
Yeah. And I actually want to go and kind of talk about that really quick, but let me go down through some of these real quick. So Hubble telescope launched. Let's see. Gulf War begins in the Middle East. I remember all of that. And that was like one of the first, I think the first war that was literally 24-hour streamed on news networks. We saw a lot of that. World Wide Web, we talked about that. The Cold War ends, we talked about that. That's the LA riots in 1992. It results in 60 deaths, over $1 billion in damage. That's crazy.
And back then, $1 billion was a lot more than $1 billion.
Yeah. Then 1993, we had the truck bomb that exploded in the parking garage under the World Trade Center in New York. And that obviously is going to lead up to people and events leading up to obviously 9/11. Some of those people were ultimately involved in helping plan 9/11, as we found out. Remember the Branch Davidian, the standoff in Waco, Texas, which was really crazy. David, if people don't know, David Koresh was kind of the self-proclaimed prophet of Jesus and had a compound there. And that was really ugly too, because that was about weapons. And
I just did the movie on it recently.
Yeah. And basically, the ATF or had stepped in, and it got really ugly. And ultimately, there was a fire set, and there's still it still goes back and forth who actually started the fire. Some say that that David Koresh and his compound of people started it, or it was the government itself. But that's all to be debated. And anyway. So let's see. We had the Branch Davidian, Storm of the Century. I'm just trying to think. The Northridge earthquake kills 72 in Los Angeles. That was the World Series, wasn't it? The when they were filming playing the World Series, and they had that was the collapse of the bridges, I think, in San Francisco.
Yeah, I
could be
remember
wrong.
I remember it, but I didn't
That might
remember
be the 80s. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
Let's see. FIFA World Cup is played. I think that was in the United States, and actually Brazil wins it. We had the Oklahoma City bombing. That was Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. Let's see. In 1995, we had OJ that was acquitted on the 2 charges of first-degree murder. Had a heat wave, budget crisis, and then going to that TWA flight in 1996. So a really crazy thing. I've watched some documentaries about this, and they still think that this actually was someone that had a shoulder firing rocket launcher that actually shot a missile into the plane.
Yeah, they had there's a group of guys that do basically like a study. I think it's lawyers and some other people, and they're doing a big thing about it. And they were, saying that people weren't interviewed and a lot of the other stuff. I failed to follow up with any of it. It didn't really there's a lot of that stuff is questionable. Like, where are they coming from with that? And the idea that a plane doesn't break up that way when it gets hit by a missile. So that's the thing, is it comes back to kind of the 9/11 thing about the conspiracy stuff that's associated with that. People want to see stuff when they look into it. So it's very, it'll last forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that just goes with anything in history, especially with a lot of things that we see today, and how the media controls things and news outlets put things out, and the different spins on different networks. And it just always leaves all that doubt to everybody. Right. What is the truth? What is not the truth? What are the facts? We just never really get a straight answer anymore.
Well, I think one of the big problems is that we see is with the world being so big, and we've actually, even though we've kind of made it smaller, it actually has gotten bigger. The idea that people don't have control over events. So when you feel like lack of control, you want to try to fill in the blanks, and sometimes people aren't very good at filling in the blanks. So if you get an event where you constantly hear conspiracy, but none of the conspiracies ever line up, then you get to the point of where you kind of have to question stuff. Obviously, you can ask any question you want. It's the same thing as if you want to sue somebody. You can obviously always sue somebody. It doesn't mean you're going to be successful with it. But that's the thing is I think that some people get into it because it empowers them, and that's why they're not willing to let go even when they have the answer. And that's what kind of frustrates me.
And not that I wanted to create a really dark show here, because I mean, now we were looking into this material, and and these are historic events that happen in the US. A lot of this shit is dark.
It's news. News is dark. That's it's in for you. Try to find stuff where news reports on stuff. And is that the condition of us as humans, is that we should be remembering the moments that we had, or is the idea that we really have come to the point of where we're kind of morbid as a species to say that the things that we remember and the things that we want to get into are the more critical and scary events. Do
you think that has a lot to do with what's put on our plate or our palate? The internet, Instagram, the news networks, cable, movies. Do you think that's conditioning us, or is it something that's built in us as species that we want to, it's the old adage that when you drive by the accident, everybody slows down because they want to look and see what happens.
Here's I think the real problem. If I did a research study and I said I need 2,000 people, I think 2,000 is a good round number, and I just said, okay, I want you guys to all go in and I want you to search stuff on the internet based on what you really like, okay, or what you would really normally search. Nobody's going to search for porn. So the information that you got is incorrect. They all search for this, and they all search, and there's certain things that we know based on the habit of the human race of what we do and what we look into. And we're in a consumer-oriented world. The idea that Google in some ways controls what we see, but it can't control what we want. And that's where we see a lot of pushback when the media comes on and says, this is the narrative. When what's his name went on TV the other day and said, you know what, we all want higher gas prices, because if we get higher gas prices, we're doing something good for the world. Nobody likes that. They did a study on it. It was like 80% of the people said that is the biggest load of BS ever, but the media will stick with that narrative. So it makes it very, very hard to figure out things. And that's, I mean, like elections, a lot of times we don't get it right because the information that we're receiving is so wrong. So like I said, I think it's consuming based, so it's what we want, but it's also, you know, like I said, there's certain levels of manipulation that can be controlled by the people that are feeding it to you, which is why we get a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. Why people like something is because it's been pushed. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it too is that I think with the way that things have changed too. I mean, you go back to the 90s, we didn't have this constant 24-hour cycle of news.
Right.
You had to wait till 6 o'clock at night to
Yep.
see the news, 5 o'clock at night.
Yep.
Now you have everything that just literally streams through. I mean, I have so many, look at the notifications I have.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
only been off my phone for an hour.
Yep.
And I have so many notifications right now. And I don't even know what the hell they are. Nor, you know, I don't care right now. I'm doing a show, but it's just, it's crazy. You know, it's really crazy. And how looped in we are as you know, looped into the technology and phones. Let me just get to some of these chats really quick.
Yeah.
Sun Eternal Camper is saying the world is crazy. I try to think of the best thing for humanity. I'm trying to find the words that I don't think people are crazy. I think there's just a lot of crazy things that cloud us to maybe become crazy.
I think of it like this: left to your own devices, if you were given the choice of saying, I'm going to do the right thing, I'm going to do the wrong thing, you would choose to do the right thing. The problem is the information that you're given is information that makes you not know what the right thing or the wrong thing is. Even if it's crystal clear, it is so convoluted and done in a way. I mean, I just took this college course. We were doing the stuff with a college course, and I'm reading the stuff, and I've done, you know, stuff with psychology, and I look at it and I go, who taught you to think this way? Like, this is not legit. And we had research studies that were done with, alcohol addiction and other things like that. And the information we came back, a 2-minute test, it would prove it wrong. So the problem is the information that you're being given is wholly inaccurate. And there's no other way of saying it. So I think as a whole, about 6% of the population is bad. In other words, there's something up there. And I'm not saying bad that they plan to cause harm, but in other words, they either don't do it. I think that even a smaller percentage of them actually intend to do things harmfully. But the idea that all these people together are trying to do the right thing and they never quite pull it off, that should be the thing that you should understand and research. Why? If everybody wants to do the right thing and everybody want to help everybody else out, why do we keep looking at stuff and going, well, it just doesn't work like that? That to me tells me it's not human nature. It's something else. So
Sun Turtle Camper is saying no more war. I agree. We need to calm down here. Yeah, I absolutely hate war as well. Wings and Watch is saying no more than so ever. It's like complication of all these movies we have watched over time. It's crazy. And that's a very good point. It's, you know, it's like, I almost think like you just look at things from the 80s or 90s movies that we saw, and it's almost like this stuff is all becoming true. And I have these
Wolverine.
I have all these weird conspiracy thoughts and stuff, like with these all scripts brought down by aliens and secretly discovered by all of these directors, and they're basically, you know, telling the future through these scripts. I mean, I know it's like far out stuff, but you know, I tend to think about
no more far fetched than stuff that Dan Aykroyd's coming
it's
with.
the aliens that are doing it. Yeah, right. So, yeah, and Wings is saying not dark, it's reality. Lucian saying hi. Talk about the watch. Yes, we do watch shows on this channel.
Yep.
We do watch shows. We're going to have a watch show coming up pretty soon with a reschedule, so you can set your reminder to that. But yeah, the format over here on Let's Talk Live has definitely changed, and but we are going to still talk watches at some point too. But right now we're talking the 90s. Sun Turtle Camper saying we need to treat planet Earth with respect. I definitely agree. And he's saying mass psychosis, and also saying 20 years of war, half my life, then Corona now, World War III. What the fuck?
Yeah,
I know. And you know what we need to do is just remember all those good things right now. Put yourself in good places, surround yourself with good people, and you have to learn to take some time to disconnect.
Yeah.
Get away from it. And that's the best thing. And concentrate on your mental health. Those are the important things. I just went through a period of I was booming away on YouTube for almost a year straight, really building the channel. And I had to take a couple of weeks off and step aside and recharge. And, and I know you've done a lot of projects through the years too. And I'm sure there's probably certain points that you backed off and recharged.
That's my thing too. And that's something I've kind of learned from the internet is the internet puts too much information of stuff that people don't know how to deal with that information. And if you understand the psychology of it and the idea of saying, I don't have to control everything in the world. There are certain things I can't control. And if I can't control it, I can't worry about it. So it's not so much just the idea of disconnecting, but the idea of don't go on Facebook looking for a fight because you're going to find one. Yeah. If you go on the internet looking for a fight, you're going to find one. And if you constantly feed yourself these negative emotions, you're going to get negative in return. The point of what we should be doing is going out and trying to find the positive and find things that are build ourselves up and empower us. Like, for instance, Sun Turtle was saying, hey, we need to respect the world. Okay, what do you want to do, Sun, to be able to do something to respect the world better? How will you teach others to respect the world? How would that? And that process isn't easy. It's easy to say, I am going to respect the world. Okay, how would you like us to respect it? Now we've got a deeper subject. Now the application because everything that happens on Facebook and all these self-help things are generated on the idea of feel-good statements. If I tell you to be positive and look up on things and do all this other stuff, it's great. Dream big. Yeah. Okay. Let me dream big. What do you want me to dream about? What am I going to do once I get that dream? What am I going to do to apply that stuff? And that's where our internet has wholly and ultimately failed us. And especially with some of this stuff it just isn't a place for people. We're spouting a lot of rhetoric, but we're not getting to any substance. And that's the thing is I want people to disconnect from some of that stuff and say, okay, what do we want to do? And then share it with us. These are our platform right here is a perfect area for us to, I would love to have solar powered vehicles back in the 80s. See, you got me on this. Back in the 80s, we had a solar power vehicle that went from Los Angeles to, I love that one too. Los Angeles to New York, I think it was completely solar powered.
Yep.
And what we found out was that solar panels were having a lot of difficulty. There's a lot of different stuff that comes to solar panels. And I think when we finally do the solar panel thing and we figure it out, it won't be solar panels the way we're traditionally think about solar panels. Right. And that's something, if you can figure out that system, and I would be happy to give pointers on that. If you plan, there's enough grants out there available from the US government that, trust me, they would pay enough to pave your way from Los Angeles to New York if you could figure it out. So, but yeah, and look at Tesla. There you go. You just figure it out, make it work. And there's a future for that. You just got to be careful because notice that Elon Musk figured it all out. And now he's under a great deal of criticism once he did. So
I want people to really understand and kind of talking about Tesla right now. And if we can kind of fast forward to the future a little bit to present day and real quick, real quick shot in the dark saying anti-social media. Absolutely.
That's right.
And he's in Sun Turtle Canvas saying fold panel.
See, he's already way ahead of it. He knows the curve.
So I think
got to make them. Do it. Don't talk about it. Make it for me.
Do it, man. Maybe you make your mark on this time.
Right.
But, just going a little bit forward too. And I want, and I'm sure that we have a lot of smart people on the, watching the chat tonight, but I want to make it very clear. And it's very interesting what's going on. Obviously we have Ukraine, we have the inflated gas prices. We have, inflation is hitting us like crazy, but it's funny, you start thinking, maybe a month or two ago, there was a lot of buzz about electric cars at that time too. So I want everybody to realize what's really going on here. I think some of the inflation in gas prices too is to push electric vehicles on people right now. I think that has some of it to do with this too. But really, who right now has $60,000 to run out and buy an electric car? So I think this whole narrative that we need to go electric.
I got to add this
Sooner
to
than
real
later. I
quick.
just don't think it's gonna still spill.
I got to add this to this real quick. There's some decisions that are made to force the inevitable.
Hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like, so people have a choice. Now you've locked them in the corner where they don't have a choice. And the thing is you're not seeing the control that's happening behind the facade
Right.
of what's going on. And hey, you know what? We don't need to do this or do that and do this, because if we sit back, we get what we want. And I think that's kind of, it is in some ways unfair, and people get upset about it. And if I'm being honest, it's why people, lose elections. Do you know what I mean? But that's the thing is I think inevitably, if we're going to do things correctly, we have to leave these decisions up to the consumer or the people that are making those decisions. If you push them in a corner, they always push back. So.
Yeah. And Sun Journal Camper saying electric car is the future. I think so. I'm still 50-50 on that. And I'm going to tell you why. I think, in my opinion, right now, if we were to push for whatever, this full 100% electric car, we get rid of gas, you guys are going to think there's a lot of variables here. Yes, you think that we're going to do away with carbon emissions, that gas prices are going to go down to next to nothing, et cetera, et cetera. But what do you think is going to happen to electricity? They're going to get you one way or another.
Oh, yeah.
Electricity is not going to stay the same. And let me just finish this
No,
point.
yeah, go ahead.
Quick.
No, please.
And a lot of this could be solved. And we've talked about this on some of the other car shows that we've had. A lot of this could be solved nuclear energy. And it's the cleanest, safest energy. But the problem is that the minute we start talking nuclear energy, what's the first thought that comes to people's minds?
Oh, Chernobyl or Fukushima or 3 Mile Island, or I could go on it forever. The beauty, here's the thing, and this is something I have to say. Yeah, go ahead. Do finish your thing.
And we don't, and right now, if we were to go full electric, I'm going to tell you, the United States, if you live in the United States, we do not, absolutely 100% do not have the grid to even support maybe having 50% electric cars right now, maybe less than that. 30%. It would cause blackouts. It would cause brownouts. We are not ready for this right now. We're not ready.
But my thing is, and I'm going to say, so if I look at the statement that he made was electric cars are the future, I'm going to correct that. Electric cars are the present. We have electric cars. If we have the demand and we have the drive, and if the consumer wants those cars bad enough, they're going to continue to push to get more and more electric cars. They will find a way. They'll find a way to do power walls. These consumers continue to spend on something, and you're going to, it's like anything. So for instance, the VHS system, everybody wanted to have a VHS in their house.
Right.
That VH system, when it first started, was thousands of dollars. Yeah, I remember my grandmother coming up to me and going, hey, because my grandmother was rich basically. And she was like, we got this new VHS system. It's great. It was a piece of junk compared to what we ended up with, but it played videos and it played VHS and we could do stuff. Then consumers continually consumed it. They put more money into that circle of a system. And there came a point, VHSs, I think they were like maybe $100 or something like that. It came to a point of where you could buy VHSs with 2 VHSs in it, all sorts of technology that came out of that. And it eventually powered the CD. That's how it works. So if the consumers want it and they're going to go out and buy it, and we've seen, I think it's a doubling right now of electric brands. And even though a lot of the stuff that's been happening has been forced by government and other things, putting those things in, we still seeing like 1.2% to 2.4% of the available vehicles out there are now electric. That's not the past. That's now. If you think about it, like there was a time when CDs were the next big thing and only 1% of the people out there could afford CDs. So if you want those things to continue to happen and the infrastructure that it takes to make those things happen, then those consumers are going to have to continue to do it. But I think it's here. It's already happening. It's just a matter of once that consumer wants it and says, look, I'm going to spend $40,000 on my mom, by the way, right now wants an electric car. She's already got it. It's going to come in 3 years or 2 years, I think it is. She's going to get her power wall. She's going to have a battery pack. She's already got 2 solar panels on her roof, and she's already got her charging station. Now she's probably going to spend, I think it's $50,000 on the car. $3,000 for just the system to plug it into, and probably another $5,000 for all the wall and all the stuff.
Crazy.
If you're willing to spend that, sooner or later that price begins to come down as more people put money into that. And then of course her system goes obsolete and somebody goes, hey, can upgrade it, we'll give you a discount here, and here we'll upgrade you.
I mean, that's the biggest problem with
That's
this
it.
right now too. And I want to get to this point as well too, but I want to touch on this really quick. I think that's the problem with this too, is that the demand, if you're going to have this big influx of people coming in and saying, all right, electric cars is the way, that's the future, and you have so many people going out and buying electric cars, what's going to happen is the demand is going to be too much more than the product that they could pump out. You're going to have people on a huge waiting list, and by the time they get that electric car, it's maybe a year or two out, and something new is going to pop up.
And therein lies your issue, because that's the thing is it's all about that demand, the supply chain. And by the way, and I hate to say this is what we learned in 1911 when we first brought out electric cars and said, we're going to do this. Remember, we had electric cars and we started doing this stuff, and we said, okay, what are the pitfalls that we're going to run into? There's no new history. It's all been done before. I've done the research on it. I have been one of the biggest proponents of electric cars forever. I've been dying to have electric cars. And the only time I was against it was, as I said, now they basically used it against us to be able to say that the only car you can have now is going to be an electric car. And it really says, okay, so what do we lose by making those choices? What do we do when we kill our history to move forward into the future? And what choices are we making to do that? Because I think some people are going to have to learn, and this is going to be a hard lesson because we've seen it in other areas in the world, is making that move over to electric is going to cause more harm for the environment to good. Because right now, if you do all electric cars, your electric cars are run on coal, natural gas. It's run on something that's literally not taking fossil fuel out of the equation. And that's something that, what's his name? The guy that did, can't remember his name there, that did Fahrenheit 9/11 or whatever.
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore just had his big documentary. And you notice that when he had a documentary that questioned about electric energy and why we haven't built our infrastructure up first before we jumped into the pool, we caused problems. We caused more issues than he's like, it's not a solution. It's done by people who want money. And you see what I'm saying? Like, that's not the example. Trust me. At the end of the day, I know people don't agree with me in some of this, but it's when the consumer drives it, they'll find a way to get it. But when it's done by anything else, if it's driven by government, if it's done by anything else, there's always pushback, and there's always problems, and there's always failure. And that's the thing. We just got to let people embrace it and not be in a big rush, and it'll happen. Like I said, the electric cars are not the past or not the future, it's the now. So, and hey, good for us. Hey man, we got Tesla, we should be celebrating this. But we're not. We're losing the plot.
Solar panels on every roof in the world, battery in the basement. We've played that game, and I'll tell you right now, I have neighbors that have solar panels on their fucking house, and they're not saving anything.
We do.
You got to understand, and this is what I think that people have to understand with this whole going green. And believe me, I'm for it. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
But the problem is that you're going to have government stepping in and regulating a lot of this shit. They're going to get their fucking money from you. Like, yes,
and they won't regulate it.
If this was a free market society, and I could go out and buy my own solar panels and put them on my house and have my own battery storage, but you can't do that. At least you can't do that here in the States. Not that I think of.
And I'm going to read that because Son put this up. He said, "Why is USA not investing in solar?" I need you to go look at the government right now and the grant programs that they have. Right now, you can get to develop anything electric millions of dollars if you can show a procedure for it, and they will give you money for it. Look up that grant. And because I've been there, I have friends that are actually trying to build electric cars. It's something that we are actually talking, kind of blowing a little bit off the cover and letting the cat out of the bag per se, but saying it. But this is something we've looked into, is doing something, building an electric car, so we can get some of that grant money and see if we can actually get into the business ourselves. It's there. But like I said, it's It's not the cure. It's
The
trying to
reason that
build
this
this
is
stuff as application. It's very difficult.
the reason is that this is also fuckery right now is
Yeah.
because, in my opinion, the government hasn't figured out a way that they're going to step in and fuck everybody. Because it's the
Yeah.
same thing like the fossil fuel industry.
You're right.
They've
Yeah.
stepped in, they've controlled it, and fucked everybody. And as much as everybody sits there and tries to say, "Oh, it's OPEC that controls these prices," no,
No.
it's OPEC, yes, some, but I think a lot of it is the government as well too. It's policies, it's procedures, there's money that goes on behind our fucking backs.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff that goes on behind our backs. So
Yeah.
if you
It
think,
used to-
and I'm trying to wait, what I'm trying to do here is wake up the people that think that green energy is going to fucking solve everything in existence. It's yes, it may for the tangible things. It's going to lower our carbon emissions. It's going to save the environment. The world is going to live long. All that stuff. But government is going to find a way to fuck you on this. And if you think that oil and gas is just going to go away, your electric bill is going to quadruple. Believe me, they'll figure out a way to get it out of your pocket.
Well, they've already for us at least the road was the carbon tax. So what they want to do is they say now remember, everything was get free to get into the market so that people can invest in this and then build the stock back up. And that was the plan, right? So once we put our stock in and people invest and they gave discounts, then everybody has an electric car. That was supposed to solve the problem for it. And what ended up happening is they realized that a lot of the money that they get paying for the roads came from the gas tax. Now, once that 2.4% that they have on the road right now is millions of dollars when you do the math on it.
Yeah.
And now they're looking at it and saying, well, we have to put something in the car that's going to track how many miles you go. And for each mile, and nobody's going to buy into that. There's no system that's going to allow them to do that. So they have to think of another way. And the next best is then average. So imagine getting an arbitrary tax once a year, whether you drive electric or gas, because it's going to be an overall tax. And that tax, you're going to get dinged one way or the other. So imagine at the end of the year, here's your $2,000 tax return. And what did I do? Oh, you have a car, right? Okay. Well, there's your tax. And that's federal. And like you said, it's never, government does it. It tries to control it and it never controls it right. And that's it. There's got to be a better way. But once they get it in their head that this is the way to fix it, they're not willing to adjust. And that's what kills you.
So, yeah, and going back to this really quick, he says, why is the U.S. not investing in solar like China? So let me ask you a question. Why is it that China has no restrictions and can open up every smokestack on the face of the earth and pollute more than the U.S., but we have to pay higher taxes on that? So I'll let that die. Sun Eternal Campus saying he lives in Denmark. Sorry, it's a small country. Sun Eternal, I respect your chats here. This has been really great. Thank you for participating.
I love it.
And we're going to agree to disagree on things. I'm sure our countries run totally different, and a lot of things are kind of fucked up over here in the U.S. But believe me, there's some really great people over here.
Well, you know what? At the end of the road, there's a lot of stuff universally across the world that's happening, that's empowering things in a very negative way. That's allowed for things bad to happen. Let's all, if we're going to do it from a world standpoint and go, okay, let's all just take responsibility for it and say that, trust me, there's a lot of governments out there, at least the US, we want to be less of a carbon footprint. We want to do things better. We want to do them leaner, meaner, faster, and cheaper, because that's the goal. You're never going to get free. People keep wanting free. You're not getting free. Somebody's paying.
But it goes back to, things like China and India can literally spew as much pollution out into the air that the US has to pay for it. And we're the ones that have to go electric, and they can still allow to burn coal.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
But they make rules for the people that they see to say they can't do it. Right. But they're doing it themselves. I don't get it.
Sun Eternal Campus says we need to live in harmony with the earth. I love this guy's way of thinking, man. Imagine if money wasn't debt. I love that positive vibe. Thank you, Sun Eternal. I really do appreciate that. So we went from the 90s into the crazy future, and it got
beyond
political and beyond.
It got crazy. Yeah. And that's the thing is I'm leaving a lot on the table here. There's a lot of this chat. I'd just say, if I really want to open up and be like, okay, this, and this, Yeah, I'm
We got to be
really
a little
holding back.
careful in the YouTube
Right.
space. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I thought that was a really great discussion. I thought maybe we'd end really quick with just some things that I miss about the 90s. I miss Blockbuster. I definitely
Yeah.
miss Blockbuster. That was an event. You got out of school, your mom used to take you over there, or your dad used to take you over on a Friday night. You'd rent a bunch of Nintendo games and videos, and you'd have all weekend to do that stuff.
And then it was GameFly and Netflix.
Yep.
Right.
Netflix
Netflix. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Netflix was mail order. Remember, you used to send it out, and then finally they were the first kind of streaming digital network. But I miss Blockbuster. I missed arcades. Oh God, I used to be in an arcade all the time. I miss playing video games. Skateboarding was huge. Punk rock music. Yeah, the really solid. That 90s of metal music, and then it eventually turned into grunge.
That was a very the genre. As we came into the 90s, really had some good vibing music. That was, I think that's the thing is we end up looking at these genres and the genres that look in that were popular. But that thing is I think that's true of any age. The stuff that's pop music now isn't that all that great, and it just kind of flash in the pan versus the stuff that you listen to that you go, that's going to stick with me for a while. And we got a lot of one-hit wonders and other stuff that the 90s that I don't think we'll ever kind of see that genre again. Do you know what I mean?
To me, I mean the 90s overall, I have to admit it, and I probably, as crazy as it seems, I think was probably the best time in my entire life, because I think you're still, for me, I was born in 78. So in the 90s, I was like, 11 all the way up until my early 20s, maybe my middle 20s. And when you're first a kid, and you're not aware of all the political stuff like we are now. Now you have kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old that's now exposed to all this political, and they're basing opinions right away on people, or this non-binary talk, and it's really
political and sex. You get it from the age of 3 years old up, which it's like you haven't even figured stuff out yet, and you're still getting slammed on.
Yeah, but back then you're discovering things, and I think it was more music driven, and art and video games and expression, in the sense of pick up an instrument or pick up a guitar, and maybe
find yourself.
Yeah, it was really just finding yourself. And now this is what we want you to be, and it's kind of sad,
I think it's funny that in the 90s too, and that was very predominant in the 90s, as we moved into, I want to say, the back room at Blockbuster. Oh boy, Basil. But yeah, that was the thing. It was right. It was the thing about saying, the American Psycho, the idea that you start off your life doing one thing, and then you were going to grow up, you were going to get responsible, you were going to get a job, you're going to put on a suit, and then you're going to join the collective. And people really pushed against that. And what we learned was there wasn't any collective. There was no thing. But like you said, there was a hive mind thinking, because the only thing we had was channel, 2, 7, 10, and 12. And that was your thing. And that was, ABC, NBC, CBS, that was your world. So that's what everybody told you, and that's what you thought was going to happen. And it didn't.
Again, I don't care what anybody says. Go back and watch 90s music. Go back and listen to 90s music. Watch the movies. It does not compare to anything today. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think this year, especially what I'm seeing in fashion too, the 90s is starting to come back. It's funny how that stuff comes back.
Yeah. The good stuff always does. It always rises to the top. Yeah.
Absolutely. I miss those days, man. I really do. I miss just being a kid and discovering all those new things and new movies and music, and just being really carefree. And I think people were, from what I saw, the group of friends that I was in, just more bonded and together. And it's sad that we kind of come out of that period, and then now with the insertion of, like we've talked about, the internet and media and all that, everybody starts to kind of form their own opinions as adults, and you kind of separate. Some friends might go this way and might go that way.
I think your generation was the last generation to actually walk out behind the house, get lost in the woods all day,
Yeah.
and then come back at 5 in the afternoon and say, mom's yelling out the window, going, "Where are you guys going to be at? We have to eat at some point today." We were kids that experienced the world, and a lot of the stuff that we're getting today is that somebody else's experience, the meta, video games, Rockstar, Grand Theft Auto, all these different things, Warcraft. You're now experiencing a world that doesn't exist and may never exist. So, and I'm wondering if that fantasy or that what do you call it? Unoriginal or not realistic fantasy is really is playing the most effect on us. You know what I mean? Something that they had in the 90s, and that really was the time that it died. Like the games came out, the internet came out, and suddenly we changed into something else. It became MySpace and Facebook and all these other things. And that's something that, hey, you know what? I'm okay with the war movies. Maybe I shouldn't be okay with, the hate that gets spread around the internet on Facebook from time to time. Maybe that's our real problem and not crazy movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I encourage people, go out. I mean, and I think back in the 90s too, we conversated a lot more. We had more of these open discussions like this in groups of people, and I think that the thing that's really great about this and being able to do a platform like this, or just meeting people and doing Zoom calls and, like-minded people and opening those conversations back up. And I really encourage people, as much as we don't do this enough today, really stop and talk to people, discover and try to learn. When I meet someone new, this is just my personal experience, I try to take away at least 3 things about that person that I learned in that conversation, and I think you'll really be amazed when you stop nowadays and you have a conversation where we're told that we don't have things in common with anybody, because of the, who they are, or their race, or the color of their skin. Stop and talk to people. You'll be very surprised at how much in common you really have as human beings. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you can do that and just all really come together.
And I'm going to add it to this too. I want to challenge everybody that's now, if you're watching it now, live, or if you're watching it 6 months or 10 months or, 50 years from now, if you're watching this, I want to make a challenge to you and say all the people that you meet in your life, or things that you meet in your life, things that people share or everything like that. Even if you look at it and you don't like it, I mean, you're sure it's so easy to find the negative and how things don't work. I challenge you to find the positive. I found you to challenge at least one thing that you look at and say, I can take that information from that thing and use it in my life to make my life better, or something else that I do. And instead of looking at it and using those negative vibes to move you forward, look at that person and say, hey, you know what? Those shoes, man, those shoes are top notch. The problem is I think that we're going to get to a world where being able to compliment people is going to be unacceptable. And I think that's the world I'm kind of scared of.
It's crazy, man. I just hope, tomorrow's my birthday. I'm going to be 44 years old. And I hope the next 44 are just as amazing as these first 44. And it's crazy. Just really having streams like this and thoughts like this, it just really starts to make you kind of think of, that I hope we have a better tomorrow. Believe me, I really do. And I don't know, man, we're coming up on that. I don't want
hour and 30. You did this to me.
We're coming up on an hour 30. And
look at this.
I don't
all
want
the people interacting with us and giving us all this great input. We were supposed to shut this down. We had to keep going for you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll tell you, man, I'm really loving this format. I'm really loving that you're over here, helping out co-host the show. I'm really loving all of these people in this chat. And I think it's a greater way of thinking at this time in the world that we live in. It's not going to get solved tomorrow, believe me. No. But the way that we can start doing it is making ourselves better, reaching out and having more conversations like this in life. And, listen, if anybody's ever down or they feel upset, you can always reach out to us here at the Let's Talk Live podcast. Come on and spend an hour and a half with us and let go of some of those feelings. Interact with us in the chat. And if you're really deep and you need someone to talk to, reach out to me on Instagram. I'll be glad to talk to anybody. So I'm telling you, I go through times, I've battled depression and anxiety my whole life. And I know what that's like, but keep your head up. The world is an amazing place. You need to just surround yourself with amazing people, and let's stop this fucking war in Ukraine, man. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna end on that. Primo, if you have anything you want to.
Yeah, keep your head up, even if it's as shiny as mine. So there you go.
Well, with that being said, we've hit the hour and 30 mark. I want to thank every amazing person that watched this evening. I hope you are all enjoying this different format and this content. I want to thank everybody this evening that spent the time over here in the chat and interacted with us. It makes us feel great, and I think this show is gonna grow. I think this channel is gonna grow. I have very good things planned for this, and we're working on getting some amazing guests. I promise you, we will have the Satori Biard stream. It's going to happen. We're just going to work out the logistics and get that stream back up. So yes, we're still doing watch content. We're going to get card people on here, musicians. We're working on it. It's just going to take some time. So stick in with us. But in the meantime, we can have these deeper conversations. So with that being said, guys, this is going to end tonight's Let's Talk Live podcast. It was a fucking great show. I had an amazing time, and we'll see you guys on the next one. But for now, we're going to hit the outro and jump out on the mothership. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.